What if the very things you're ashamed of, the fears you bury, the doubts that haunt you, the impulses you silence, aren't signs of weakness or failure, but signposts? What if those uncomfortable, messy, hidden parts of yourself are actually pointing toward your life's purpose? We spend so much time trying to fix ourselves, to overcome our flaws, to silence the parts we think make us unworthy. But what if those so-called flaws are not mistakes, but messages? Today, we're going to explore a radical and transformative idea from one of the greatest minds in psychology, Carl Jung's theory of the shadow self. Jung believed that the parts of ourselves we reject, our anger, our envy, our fear, don't just disappear. They live in the unconscious, shaping our behavior, our choices, even our relationships. But here's the secret. By confronting the shadow instead of running from it, we begin the journey of becoming whole. This isn't a story about darkness. It's about integration, transformation, and ultimately, liberation. So what exactly is the shadow? According to Carl Jung, the shadow is the unconscious part of ourselves that we deny, suppress, or disown. It's everything we've pushed out of our conscious identity because it felt too painful, too shameful, or simply too uncomfortable to face. This could be anger, jealousy, greed, but it could also be ambition, confidence, or creativity. It's not just the darkness we fear. Sometimes, it's the power we're afraid to own. You see, from a young age, we're taught what's acceptable and what isn't. We quickly learn how to perform, how to show the world only the parts of ourselves that are likable, polite, safe. And the rest? That gets buried, hidden behind smiles and habits. But just because something is hidden doesn't mean it's gone. The shadow doesn't disappear. It leaks out through our triggers, our patterns, our projections. Ever felt an intense reaction to someone that didn't make sense? That's often your shadow being reflected back to you. Jung believed that ignoring the shadow only gives it more power. The more we repress it, the more it unconsciously drives our decisions. But here's the breakthrough. The shadow isn't just a container of negativity. It's also where we've hidden immense potential, creativity, strength, passion, and clarity. The very parts we were told to reject might hold the seeds of our true self. When we begin to recognize our shadow, not as something evil or broken, but as a neglected part of our humanity, we open the door to transformation. We stop fighting with ourselves and start listening. And in that listening, we begin to heal. Recognizing your shadow isn't always dramatic. It doesn't show up like a villain in a movie. In fact, it often hides in plain sight. It shows up in the everyday moments that feel out of proportion. The sudden burst of anger at a minor inconvenience, the jealousy you feel towards someone else's success, or the shame that creeps in when you speak your mind. These aren't random emotional outbursts. They're invitations, clues, signs that something deeper is asking to be seen. One of the most common ways the shadow appears is through emotional triggers. When someone's behavior sets you off, makes you irrationally annoyed, judgmental, or hurt, there's a good chance it's not just about them. It's about you. Carl Jung called this projection. When we disown traits in ourselves, we often see them exaggerated in others. For example, if you've suppressed your assertiveness, you might resent people who seem too confident. If you hide your desire for recognition, you may roll your eyes at someone who enjoys being in the spotlight. The world becomes a mirror, constantly reflecting your unconscious back to you. But these reactions aren't punishments, they're opportunities. Every uncomfortable feeling can be traced back to a part of you that has been denied a voice. The shadow doesn't scream for attention. It whispers through your reactions, your habits, your dreams. When you start to pay attention to what triggers you and ask yourself why, you begin peeling back the layers of conditioning and uncovering who you really are beneath the surface. This process takes courage. It's easier to blame others than to look within. But every time you turn inward instead of outward, every time you ask, what part of myself is being reflected here? You reclaim a piece of your power. And slowly, the shadow begins to shift from something that controls you to something that guides you. So, what happens when you begin to see your shadow clearly? When you stop running from the parts of yourself you've denied and start listening to them. According to Carl Jung, this is the beginning of a powerful inner process he called individuation, the journey of becoming whole. Individuation isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming complete. It's the integration of opposites, light and dark, strength and vulnerability, logic and emotion, into a single, authentic self. Most of us live through a carefully constructed mask, what Jung referred to as the persona. It's the image we present to the world, the version of ourselves that fits in, pleases others, plays it safe. But beneath that mask is the real you, the full, untamed self that includes not just your virtues, but also your flaws, your shadows, your unlived potential. Individuation is the process of peeling back the mask and aligning with that deeper truth. Think of the classic hero's journey. Every great myth and story involves a moment where the hero must face their own darkness. Hercules didn't just battle monsters. He wrestled with his own rage and guilt. Luke Skywalker had to confront the dark side within himself before he could become a Jedi. These aren't just stories. They're psychological mirrors. We are all on that same journey, whether we realize it or not. The question is, are you willing to take that first step? Are you ready to stop hiding from your darkness and instead ask, what is it here to teach me? The road to individuation isn't easy. It demands honesty, humility, and courage. But it leads to something few people ever truly experience: a life of inner alignment, clarity, and meaning. When you integrate your shadow, you're not becoming someone else. You're finally becoming yourself. Shadow work may sound mystical, but in reality, it begins with something simple: awareness. You can't heal what you won't face, and you can't integrate what you haven't acknowledged. The first tool in this inner work is self-inquiry, asking honest, sometimes uncomfortable questions that peel back the layers of who you've been told to be. Questions like, what do I fear most about myself? What traits in others trigger me? What dreams or desires have I buried because they seemed impractical or embarrassing? Write these down. Reflect on them. Let them simmer. You might be surprised by what surfaces when you create space for the truth. Another powerful practice is journaling, not just about your daily life, but about your emotional responses, your dreams, your recurring thoughts. Jung himself kept detailed journals to explore his unconscious. He believed that our dreams were direct messages from the shadow. The people, animals, or strange symbols that show up while we sleep may be carrying hidden truths. Pay attention to them. Ask, what is this dream trying to show me about myself? You can also try something called dialoguing with the shadow. Imagine sitting across from the part of you that you fear or reject and simply talk to it. Ask it questions. Let it speak. Why are you here? What are you trying to protect me from? What do you need me to understand? You might discover that your shadow isn't a monster. It's a wounded protector trying in its own way to help you survive. The point of all this work isn't to fix yourself. It's to become aware of the full range of who you are, so you can move through life with authenticity instead of self-deception. Shadow work is not about indulging your impulses or acting out your pain. It's about honoring your inner complexity and learning how to respond to it with wisdom instead of fear. Your shadow doesn't just shape how you feel about yourself. It shapes how you relate to everyone around you. Often, the unresolved parts of our inner world show up most clearly in our relationships. Have you ever found yourself in recurring conflicts with a partner, a friend, or a colleague over the same issue again and again? Or noticed that certain people trigger you more than seems reasonable? These aren't just random clashes. They're reflections of the shadow at work. Carl Jung believed that relationships act as mirrors, revealing the parts of ourselves we haven't yet accepted. When someone frustrates or irritates us, it's easy to focus on what they did wrong. But shadow work invites a deeper question. What is this situation revealing about me? Maybe their confidence stirs up your own insecurity. Maybe their emotional distance touches a fear of abandonment you've tried to bury. These moments aren't meant to shame you. They're invitations to grow. The beauty of this process is that it transforms relationships. When you stop projecting your pain onto others, you create space for empathy. You become less reactive, more compassionate. You stop trying to control or fix other people, and instead, you focus on understanding yourself. That shift changes everything. It softens conflict. It deepens trust, and it allows you to connect with others, not from a place of need or fear, but from a place of wholeness. What if the very things you've been hiding are the source of your deepest gifts? Carl Jung believed that the shadow doesn't just contain our fears and flaws. It also holds our untapped potential. The energy it takes to suppress our desires, emotions, and instincts doesn't disappear. It builds pressure. But that same pressure, when redirected, can fuel creativity, passion, and purpose. Think about it. How often have you silenced your voice out of fear of judgment? How many ideas, projects, or dreams have you abandoned because they felt too risky or not good enough? Those buried longings don't vanish. They become part of the shadow, and the longer they stay hidden, the more restless you feel. But when you give them room to breathe, when you allow the suppressed parts of you to be seen and expressed, you tap into something raw, real, and incredibly powerful. Your anger, for instance, might become a force for social justice. Your craving for recognition might become the engine behind powerful creative work. Your sensitivity, once dismissed as weakness, might be your greatest strength in connecting with others. This is where purpose begins, not in trying to become someone else, but in reclaiming who you already are. Some of the most influential artists, leaders, and thinkers in history weren't great in spite of their shadows. They were great because they embraced them. They turned their inner chaos into art, their pain into purpose. And you can too. When you stop running from your shadow and start engaging with it, you unlock the energy that was once spent hiding. That energy can now be used to create, to build, and to live in alignment with your truth. Shadow work isn't just a personal journey, it's a collective one. When you begin to integrate your shadow, the transformation doesn't stop with you. It ripples outward, touching your relationships, your community, and the world around you. Carl Jung believed in something called the collective unconscious, a shared layer of the human psyche where all our experiences, myths, and symbols are connected. And every step you take toward wholeness contributes to that collective healing. Think about it. When you stop projecting your insecurities onto others, you create space for understanding. When you face your own fears, you become less reactive, more grounded, more compassionate. You stop operating from a place of defense and begin acting from a place of inner peace. That shift changes how you parent, how you lead, how you love, how you show up in the world. Imagine a world where more people embrace their shadows instead of running from them, where instead of blaming others for their discomfort, they took responsibility for their healing. Conflict would shrink, empathy would grow, and we'd begin to see each other, not as threats, but as reflections. This is the real power of shadow work. It's not just self-improvement. It's a quiet, revolutionary act that changes not only your life, but the lives you touch. As we come to the end of this journey, take a moment to reflect. The shadow, the part of yourself you were taught to fear, ignore, or hide, is not your enemy. It's not something broken that needs to be fixed. It is, in fact, a gift, a mirror, a messenger. It holds the energy, insight, and power you need to become whole. Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." That is the essence of shadow work, not to escape your darkness, but to face it and learn from it. Wholeness doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from being real. When you stop fighting with yourself and start listening, truly listening, to the parts you've rejected, you unlock a level of peace, authenticity, and purpose that no outside achievement can give you. The journey of integration is not quick. It's not always easy. But every step you take is a step toward living a life that is honest, free, and deeply aligned with who you really are. So don't turn away from your shadow. Turn toward it. There's wisdom there. And maybe, just maybe, that's where your true purpose has been hiding all along.